So.
Yeah, I did it for several years.
What do you do if there's not enough people? I'm sure it's that. Sure. Probably happens every year.
More often than you know.
Yeah.
My polling place is under construction, the one that I was assigned to. That's in like Pavilion, so.
Where'd they move it to?
Well, since we're all located, I mean.
Oh, you can go
both
anywhere.
centers, yeah. So Our Lady of Guadalupe or Ivy Tower are closest to me.
Yeah. That's right, I forgot that it's open now.
We lost ours, Church of God out there on the road. School bus.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Common Council meeting. We'll start with the invocation. Diane?
Father, we come tonight with two simple requests: that we have a safe and fair election tomorrow, and that we remember the cost and the price of freedom this Friday when we think about our veterans. We're grateful for both of those things, that we can have a free election, that we can have an open council meeting tonight, that citizens can speak up and say whatever they want to. And we are ever mindful of the fact that those things are not just free to us, but that a high cost has been paid in lives in order to secure that and to maintain it throughout the history of this country. We thank you that we live here in this country, and we ask that we do justice to our citizenship. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Diane. Appreciate it. Let the minutes reflect all council members are present. So with that, we'll move to the approval of the minutes from the October 17th meeting. Those minutes were presented for your approval. Are there any questions or corrections? If not, I'll take a motion. I'll entertain a motion to approve them as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
All right, thank you, Diane. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Cindy. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. I'd like to welcome all our visitors tonight. Appreciate you coming out on a dark night that gets darker earlier. And the only redemption is I think there's supposed to be some type of eclipse real early in the morning,
Yeah.
at 5 o'clock. So I don't know what that has to do with it, but I always think those things are pretty cool.
They are.
So,
Poll workers will get to see it.
yeah, the poll workers. All right. Well, thank you all. There's a few reports that have been presented. The one is the Mediacom cable franchise fee, a whopping $265.50 for the third quarter of 2022. And Lynn has presented the fund report, the October fund report. Are there any questions on either of those? All right. Well, with no unfinished business, let's move into new business. Looks like Jeremy is going to pretty much dominate the agenda tonight, so we'll let him get started with ordinance 2022-1101, which is an expansion of the north and south residential TIF districts. This was considered at this afternoon's redevelopment commission. You've got two members here, Jeff and Mike, that were there, and I'm sure they'll have a few comments, but Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, so this afternoon, the redevelopment commission kicked off expanding both the southern and northern residential TIF districts. Tonight, what you would be requested to do is to designate them economic development target areas, which allows us to expand those two areas to include two developments or two properties that were annexed in late, I think, 2019 for the sole purpose of targeting single-family residential growth. Both projects have been outlined within the economic development plans for those districts. The southern one, is part of the $1.4 million lift station that we're building, and then the northern one, we are expanding or extending the sanitary sewer to help develop that property. Both of these projects, the reason why we're here requesting the target areas and to expand those districts is to build single-family homes, something that the city is in much need of. And these projects would develop around 90-some units apiece, so it'd be about 180 units we'd be adding to those residential TIF districts. So the only thing you're really doing tonight is, like I said, designating them the economic development area, target area. That will kind of be the first step for the council. This will go before the Plan Commission, the school board, the Economic Development Commission will also review this. So there's a few boards that it has to go through yet, but this is just kind of the first step. The redevelopment kicked it off this afternoon, and this would be the next step.
Jeremy, would you address the maps that you presented and discuss the existing area versus the areas that are being added?
Yeah, so the northern economic development target area is a little bit different. There's a red section up into the kind of the west that we're actually taking out of. It's currently in that residential TIF, and we're removing that from the TIF. And then the area that's outlined in red is what's being added to that TIF district. The southern one is the same thing. We're not removing anything from the southern residential TIF, but we are adding the area that's outlined in red would be the proposed addition to these residential TIFs.
Diane, it's kind of faint. It's pretty much down at the bottom of the top, the northern picture.
Oh, okay, where the Park Ridge South is.
Here.
Okay.
This is the area that's being excluded.
Oh, okay, it just didn't come out well. So these
So
two
What's in blue
pieces.
is the current.
Yeah, the
right?
current,
I found
and
red
the
that
red's
way.
down there. Yep,
Okay.
it's kind of hard to
Yeah,
see.
you couldn't read that lead
No.
up there, and I tried.
Jeremy,
to
the
track.
blue is the existing TIF, the red is what's coming out, and the red frame.
So the outline in red on the
Yeah.
northern TIF district is new, and then on the bottom map, it's the light blue that is also outlined in red.
Yes.
So those are two small additions, one to each. And then, as Jeremy mentioned, there's an area that's being removed from the TIF as well. Okay. Questions?
Jeremy, this afternoon, we looked at the northern and southern residential TIF districts. There were two resolutions and they were separate. Now the council's looking at an ordinance with both jurisdictions in one ordinance. Can you clarify why or part of the steps?
It's just this does both. It's designating both the north and the south as economic development target areas, whereas the resolutions that were approved by the Redevelopment Commission, those resolutions are part of the process, the TIF process. So you as a council are just designating them as economic development target areas.
Okay.
The Redevelopment Commission is approving those district expansions, and so there will be layers of documents on what the Redevelopment Commission does. That will include the Plan Commission, the School Board, the Economic Development Commission, and the Council. So it's a little bit different, but this one is doing both of them at the same time.
Okay.
So Jeremy, any TIF district we propose first has to be designated as an economic development target area. Is that correct?
No,
No,
this is specific to
to
residential.
residential, okay.
This allows us to collect that revenue from residential, because a normal TIF district does not collect residential TIF. It collects commercial and industrial TIF. Yeah.
Okay. I thought we had to designate even commercial areas or industrial areas an
Depending.
economic revitalization area. Is that correct?
No. Yes.
Yes.
Economic development.
That's what I got
Yeah,
confused with.
revitalization, an or whatever, Economic Development Revitalization Area.
Yeah, this is a different, economic revitalization is
Or
for commercial.
ERA, yeah, it's an
ERA is
ERA.
commercial and
An ERA is the
industrial.
process for tax abatements and all that, yeah. It's a little bit different than this, which is germane.
But it's
to
similar,
residential.
we're designating that these areas are in the
Yes.
mix.
Yeah, you're designating these, which allows us to collect residential or target residential as the collection.
I'm
Keep-
curious about the area that's being removed. Is that advantageous in some way?
A little bit. So when we originally did the residential TIFs, I included that there's some segments along there that are residential and it could continue to go residential. But the conversations I've had over the last 2 years have not been residential. So I don't really see a purpose in keeping it in there.
Okay.
And some of those conversations have revolved around the potential for some economic development incentives to spur some development along there. And if it was in that residential TIF, we would not be able to collect it. So we're going to take it out. At some point in time, if a development happens, it might go into the northern TIF. If not, then it'll just be like any other area within the city.
Okay.
Jeremy, do these other local units of government look at the resolutions, or will they be looking at this ordinance? Will they be looking, or
They have received the notice, so they'd be looking at what the redevelopment commission does, not necessarily this.
the resolution, two resolutions we
Yeah.
looked at earlier?
Yep.
So this is just part of the many steps, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
But
you, Jeremy.
everything that gets recorded and sent to them and sent to the state and sent to the county will come from the redevelopment commission.
Okay, thank you.
Mike or Jeff, any other comments from the discussion this afternoon? Or is this, you feel this pretty much follows what you all were talking about today?
I appreciate the clarification from Jeremy, all the hard work, and these are steps to encourage development, and I appreciate that.
I have nothing to add, really. It's,
Okay.
I think everything was pretty well covered even at this
Right.
meeting here. My question was answered when Josh asked, because I was wondering if we take that out as a residential, should we bring it back in another form? But I guess not till we're ready for it.
Yeah, there's no real incentive for us to do it unless someone was to come forward. And the conversations I've had, it's been on and off again. So they may come back to the table. But when we were having the conversation 6 months ago, when I was putting this together, it would have to come out. And now they've kind of taken a different direction for the time being, but they could come back to the table 6 months from now, so.
Understand.
Jeremy, will you explain, if the council approves this tonight, will the council see this again at a council meeting, or is this?
This is
pretty
the
much-
first reading.
Okay, but this specific
Yes.
economic, or EDA, economic development area, if we approve that in the first and second reading, does the council then see this back?
Typically, you do, yes. Typically,
Okay.
you would see a resolution that would affirm what the Plan Commission has done. I haven't looked that far ahead in the calendar because next up's the school board, and then after the school board is the Plan Commission. So I'm going through the process, but typically you would
Right.
actually see it come back, and you would basically be affirming what the Plan Commission did.
So this is a first step. Other questions?
Are there any other?
Hey, Jeremy, I think I do have one question. I know the state at one point prohibited the use of this tool if you've had more than 1% increase in the number of single-family homes built in the last, previous 3 years. Or how does that work with this?
Well, that is the purpose of this document tonight. This is a workaround to that. In the first time we did this, we did not designate an economic development target area because we didn't need to. We were below the 1%.
Because we were still below the 1%.
Now, to that point, I believe they're going to probably remove the 1%.
Yes.
Probably this year. That's been the talk, so that may end up going away anyhow,
All right, thank you.
these projects. Didn't just happen, it's been in the works for 2 years, but we finally got to a point where we can actually refinance these loans, reduce the interest rate, take advantage of that money, and put it towards these projects.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you,
Jeff?
Chairman. Sure. Good evening. So just to following through the IFA, which essentially SRF is the brownfield program that they offer up for the reasons that Jeremy stated. And then there's also the other program is having to do with essentially septic relief. So they're really kind of two separate programs, but we're kind of combining them sort of into one to simplify things. But as Jeremy and the mayor mentioned, this really relates back to the 2018 revenue bonds that were issued through SRF at that time, estimated at, and again, I'm rounding here, about $1.6 million for the cleanup. And then the lift station project is dollars of new project or new money that we're looking to issue through the SRF. So what the SRF has offered is that they're willing to add an additional $3.5 million to the outstanding $32 million loan that we already have. So if we were to just do that, take out a new loan, obviously that would be additional impact, right? Because we're adding more money to the outstanding bond issue. The advantage here is that with the SRF program, we're going to pay the same debt service. Our goal here is to pay the same debt services we're already paying. What to do is reduce the rate, which is at the 2.35%, down to 1.238%. And so pretty good reduction there. So at the end of the day, what that leaves us with is an additional $3.5 million in new money. 1.6 roughly goes to Warsaw Chemical to pay that, to pay those costs. Roughly 1.9 goes towards the lift station project. We basically reissue the 2018 bonds at a lower interest rate. We add the $3.5 million at 0%, and at the end of the day, we keep the same annual debt service payments for the remaining 17 years as what we would have paid in the first place. So we're essentially city's essentially getting $3.5 million of more money without any additional cost to the city, or obviously any additional rate impact, which is good news for the sewage works. The other, I guess, benefit here is SRF has offered to pay for the cost of issuance. So the legal fees, bond counsel fees, financial advisor fees, they said they're going to cover those. So pretty good deal. Almost sounds too good to be true, but in this case, it's true. So yeah, that's I guess the other thing I would just share is, again, since we're targeting the same debt service payment, and Lynn, you appreciate this, the debt service reserve amount that you're funding, over the 5-year period, it's going to remain the same, or it might actually be slightly less, but pretty much the same. So no impact there either. And the new loan is the same 17 years. So we're not extending the term, we're not shortening the term, we're keeping everything the same, just changing the interest rate and the principal amounts. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
So I noticed there wasn't a bond schedule of payments attached, but it would just be the same as what we approved then in 2018.
Yeah, the payments will be the same. The principal, the actual maturities, the principal amounts will change because the interest rate is changing. So in order to target the same debt service payment, we actually do have to adjust the principal payments throughout the term. And we're still working through that. But we will have that information pulled together here very soon. I believe the intention is to, if the council moves to introduce the bond ordinance this evening, do final reading, I think, at the next meeting, and adopt it at that meeting with the intention that we would actually close on
Before the end of the year.
the transaction before the end of the year. And so we would have a new payment schedule at that point in time.
Okay.
Yep.
Others? I would, go ahead, Lane.
Would our monthly transfers then basically still be the same as what they are now?
They're going to basically be the same. Yep, they'll be slightly because we weren't able to get exactly to the dollar for each payment, but they're,
You'll let us know.
we'll prepare new schedules, but essentially they're going to be about the same.
And then, is it basically retiring then the 2018 bond, and it'll be reissued as this, or is it still going to be, okay?
Yep. So we're gonna, I'm not sure if they're, how SRF is gonna phrase it, if it's a, because in the ordinance, some interesting wording, I haven't seen this, but they call it replacement 2018 bonds.
Yeah,
Usually we would call it a refunding bond,
yeah.
but since we're just, SRF is just restructuring it, maybe they're not calling it a refunding, but at the end of the day, this is going to replace the 2018
I
bond
just
schedule.
have to know how to word it, so, for Gateway, but that's. okay.
Yep, yeah, and we'll work through that language with them to
Okay.
make sure we've got the proper language for you.
So we don't get confused.
Yep.
So Jeff, if I'm close here, the 70-page ordinance, I've heard benefit and incentive. Through this program and state code, there's an incentive if you're environmentally friendly. We will provide a benefit through the bond or the loan, the 3.5 million. We'll restructure it, so the payments will be the same, but you'll get the 3.5 million to target these environmental friendly programs that Jeremy has been working on and the mayor for several years now. Is that okay as a to sort of wrap my brain around?
That's exactly, that's exactly correct, yes. We're adding $3.5 million, lowering interest rate to keep the same payments as they are, so.
Environmentally friendly, the target. these two.
Correct,
Okay.
because of those specific projects, which align with SRF's initiatives
Yeah.
and programs, right?
When we originally approached SRF about this loan, or IFA about the SRF loan for the expansion, they were discussing these types of advantages to this loan back in 2018. As Jeremy said, we weren't to the point where we could take advantage of it, but you may remember at one point, they actually, I think, gave us 0.5% off because the methane gas that was generated out at the plant, they were going to co-generate into electricity, and they provided an incentive to knock 0.5% off to get it down to 2.34 at the time the loan was made. So we've had several discussions with them along the way, and obviously IFA works with IDEM very closely, and I'm not going to say I understand how they have the latitude, but I assume that since it's federal funds, that they've got the ability to manage these loans and make them advantageous to communities. Instead of paying interest, essentially we're taking the interest we were going to pay, and we're going to pay to have these environmental things taken care of. So, yeah, it sounds great, and it is great, and the use of those funds is very, as you suggest, very targeted and specific to certain types of environmental issues. And not all environmental issues were eligible. But I know we've had lots of discussions, and IFA has been bent over backwards to make sure we understood this and we're able to take advantage of it. So, like I said, this is a great opportunity.
I really appreciate it. I think Jeremy's leadership, his role that has been basically created, Jeff here tonight, the mayor's leadership, as well as everybody else, that's how you end up seeing a 70-page ordinance like this that will assist our board and then the residents of this community in the tune of 3.5 million. This is good. So thank you to all parties involved as I just sit here and look forward to saying yes.
So we're asking for your consideration on this ordinance on first reading tonight, 2022-1102. Jeremy, do you have any final comments?
No, just that, what a breath of fresh air to work at IFA.
Yeah. Amen.
Crazy.
All right. Back to you all.
Does everybody understand it? It took me a little bit this
As
afternoon
much as we need to.
to cut through it, but I finally got it. It's really simple once you understand it. It's really simple.
It's just not an opportunity that comes along very
It's
often.
it's complicated, but
There's the point, yeah, you
Yeah.
know,
it's simple.
this is rare, this is,
Usually if it sounds too good to be true,
It is.
but in this case, it's a great partnership with state of Indiana.
Mike,
Yes, sir. I would make a motion that this group pass this ordinance tonight, 2022-11-02,
On first reading.
on the first reading. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Diane, second. Now, any further discussion, final questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passed unanimously. And we'll reconsider this on second reading at our next meeting. All right. Let's move on to item 3. Jeremy, this is a slightly smaller request. We'll let you go ahead with.
Speaking of brownfields, on another brownfield project, so this redevelopment general transfer request is to move $2,000 from other services to improvements other than building. We had 2 projects in the redevelopment general we were paying for this year. The first one was for some pumps in the lift station for the senior housing project on Market Street. And the second project was the demolition of the Arnault. That's going to kick off the 60-unit family housing, affordable housing project on the Arnault property. In those projects, there was enough in the budget to do that. Unfortunately, when we got to the Arnault demolition, we hit some concrete bunkers that were in the ground that we were not aware of, that cost some additional money to tear out. And that's why I'm requesting a transfer of that $2,000 to cover that additional cost when they removed those large concrete bunkers that were found.
All right, so this is quite simply a transfer from 390 to 444 in the redevelopment general budget. And we could consider and approve this one reading tonight on Resolution 2022-1101.
I would move to approve Resolution 2022-11-01.
Thank you, Cindy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jerry, thank you. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Motion passed unanimously. And finally, item 4 would be a streetlight request, southwest corner of Crest Lane Drive. I know that request came, I passed it on to Justin and had Dustin take a look at it as well. And it appears there is a request to authorize placement of that streetlight. Do you have anything to add to that?
This is a process that's been gone through many times. Obviously, as a council member, you see these requests from time to time. Certainly, we do light intersections that are deemed unsafe. So having looked at this, the Plan Commission, I think, is making a recommendation to the council that you would authorize the streetlight to go in at this location of Crest Lane Drive and Gillum Drive South.
Questions?
Would that be a decorative light like
No.
No, so
I
it'll go on the
see
existing.
around, or it would be one of the big,
it'll
Utility.
be- Yeah, it's an existing utility pole, so it'll just be a light on the utility pole.
This is in my district, and we've been working with this neighborhood to try to figure out what to do there and where it needs to go. And so appreciate your cooperation with figuring that out finally. It's been a couple years that they've been looking at it, so, it's needed. We
It's
just
a dark corner.
It's
I'm
a
familiar
dark
with it.
corner, and especially right now, and then kids like riding their bikes and stuff, that's one of the issues there, is because they like to go down that hill, and then there's, it's just not safe, so. And then the people walking in the neighborhood too, because there's no sidewalks, so they have to walk on the streets, so.
Anyone else? So Diane, are you
Yes,
suggesting
I'm
we?
making a motion that we approve this request.
All right.
I would second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. Jeremy, thanks for all your work tonight.
Yeah.
Jeff, thank you for coming down and making the request simple to understand. Appreciate that. All right, are there any other matters to come before the council?
I feel like I'm singing a refrain, but kudos going out to our street department again for their quick response to this storm. And as well as just keeping up with the leaves and all those kinds of things. And to the Parks Department and the cemetery too for their quick cleanup for our residents. Just very grateful for our city workers, and they go above and beyond, and they just get out there whenever they're needed, and it's really appreciated.
Yeah, we've got several calls in City Hall today just thanking
Yes.
them for their work and the conditions they work in, which will only get a little bit dicier as we
Yeah.
head into the winter. So thank you, Diane.
Yeah, I guess that's this Saturday.
Don't jinx us. All right. Anyone else? Any visitors, comments? All right, well, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Second.
Before I bang the gavel, be sure and vote. Thank you.